I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work and are backed by science. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body, and that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. We use only top-of-the-line formulations dosed for maximum results and the best flavoring systems available. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television on rxmuscle.com. This is Iron Debate, the show where we settle the score. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. Glad you can join us wherever you are. Hope you were all staying safe. Last week, we had Iron Debate with Vince Taylor and Kevin Levrone, and since we had such positive feedback and so many of you expressed interest in having more legends on the show on a consistent basis to come on and talk about different bodybuilding topics, well, that's exactly what we figured we would do this week. Now, the first guest that we're going to introduce is the one that we've been trying to get on the show for quite some time now. He's been traveling all over the world, obviously working with all sorts of different clients. And finally, he came back. He's in the United States, and he's like, I'm ready whenever you guys are. And we're like, let's make it happen this week. And of course, we are talking about the legend himself, Chris Cormier. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sid. Good to be here. Thank you, guys.
Chris, why don't you get the audience a little caught up on what you've been up to? Obviously, we've been kind of bantering back and forth for quite some time now. You said you would get on with us when you were back in the country. Why don't you get everybody caught up?
Yes, well, the pandemic happened during the Arnold Classic season, kicked off, and had a great run over at the Ohio Arnold Classic, and then went out to, rolling the dice, taking the chances to make it to the next Arnold in Australia with Tony Doherty. And, that was the expo and everything was canceled there. So, they just had the amateur show, which was, by the hair of his chinny chin chin. He pulled that off. So then just everything was getting more hairier and hairier in the United States. Just decided to stay a little bit longer over there because the numbers was way different in Australia. New Zealand was down to no cases. And so we stayed there in Melbourne and went down to Gold Coast and spent like a month over there, But it was like pretty much open. So I had like a less rough of a time than most people in the world. So it was definitely a lot more control over there in Australia. So I just got back like a couple, like 10 days or so ago, and just quarantining just to play it safe and then go from there.
And obviously, we saw that you are working with four-time men's physique champion Jeremy Buendia, so it's good news for him. Obviously, we're all going to be excited to see what he has to bring come December. Speaking of December, let's bring in Sugar Shawn Ray, another legend that we're going to have on the show. Welcome, Shawn.
Yeah, man. I'm just chilling.
Shawn, I don't know if we actually got a chance to touch base with you after all the big announcements with the Olympia, obviously, new date, new venue. For those that haven't heard from you in the RX Muscle audience, give a quick your quick assessment about the new venue and the new date and everything that's going to come along with it.
Yeah, well, we Digital Muscle broadcast the Olympia live last year, and we'll be doing it again this year. The question is whether or not we're going to move to pay-per-view. That's still up for discussion. But we've moved to the Planet Hollywood, as Dan Solomon had announced, along with Jake Wood and Muscle Contest, Tamer El-Gundy. It's going to be in the Zappos Theater, seat 7,000. Will we have a packed house? I mean, the pandemic is basically dictating what we will have and what we won't. The sports are starting to open up. I think the NBA starts practice this week, and the football will follow whatever they're going to do. They've been talking about a fanless football season, which I can't imagine, but because of television, it could still pull it off. And I think when the numbers start going down, things start opening up, we could wind up with a really good situation in Vegas. I haven't missed the Mr. Olympia since 1988. I've been present in some form or capacity. So I'm excited, and I'm happy to have it back on the Strip. People have been begging for that. That's a huge, for anybody that's never been or they've heard there's some changes. This is probably the biggest, best change that we can do as a sport for the fan experience, from the athletes experience, and of course from the venue. The production value is going to be off the charts. So I'm actually leaning towards them trying to go towards a pay-per-view, because I think there's a lot of people that'll be hesitant to travel, that don't have the funds. It's right before Christmas. And there's going to be some limitations on people not being able to get there. And the UFC had a very successful pay-per-view event without the fans. I think come hell or high water, the Olympia is going to happen. And the question will be whether or not it'll be pay-per-view.
As we now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, we of course get Shawn's thoughts on the new venue and obviously the production capabilities that this new venue is going to hold. And I know he just brought up something that you had been talking about for quite some time. That is a pay-per-view format for this upcoming Olympia.
It's a no-brainer. You have to
no-brainer.
You got to do the pay-per-view, because people will not hesitate to put the money down. The real fans, like I said, it'll help recoup some of the lost funds that they will make, losing from ticket sales. And I think ultimately you can actually make a lot more money on the pay-per-view, especially if you make it affordable. You don't have to make it $40. You make it $10 or $15 or $20.
Yeah. I think 25 is probably the magic number, because you got to pay for prejudging and then pay for the final. So
if it's going to be a 2-day,
10 for prejudging, 15 for finals, 25 is a pretty round number.
Well, I mean, if you do it for both days, Friday and Saturday, then I think it's worth it, because you're getting 2 days worth of stuff. And like I said, I think it's a no-brainer. I don't think it would work for any other show, but for the Olympia, absolutely people will pay for it.
I agree.
Dave, let's get a little primer on
this show. Of course, we did Iron Debate
last week. We had Kevin Levrone. We had Vince Taylor. We were talking about different forms of training, the best style of training to build muscle. This time around, the fact that we had a confirmation from Chris Cormier, your idea was let's talk posing, and I guess a good match for him would be Shawn Ray. We're talking about two of the more entertaining bodybuilders of their time.
Yeah, I think the art of posing has been lost. Chris and I have discussed this. Shawn and I have discussed this before in previous shows. And to me, that's, look, I wasn't the most graceful poser, but I was entertaining. And you know what? You have to play to whatever you're good at doing. But if you're not up on that stage captivating the audience and the judges and making them laugh and say, wow, then you haven't done your job as a bodybuilder. It's not good enough just to look good. Okay, on that stage, you have to be able to present it. And these two guys were some of the best in the business. So I'm interested to see what their thoughts on as far as who they felt were some of the best posers, the most entertaining, et cetera, and what we can maybe do to improve the entertainment value.
So with that, let's go to Chris Cormier first. Chris, in your definition, in your mindset, and obviously, we've seen you work with today's bodybuilders, most notably with Sergio Oliva, Breon Ansley, the crew over at Oxygen. In your definition, what makes a great poser? What makes a great entertainer on the bodybuilding stage?
Like for myself, I used to have this in my mind. Like, it wasn't like going through each step that I'm going to do on stage, but I would know the song so well that I would know what to do at that when that time comes. But also I would feed off the crowd so much that it'll probably egg on a little bit something more so during my routine. But I think a really good poser is one who would leave a vivid memory to the fans and to the judges. Like, this year at this time, this song was playing and you did this. And people can remember these times and these events when they happened, because they were so good and so entertaining. You can go back with Dave. I remember seeing all those guys on stage at a particular time, and I could see the look in their face, the hand movements. That you got to use your whole body to make something happen. But you should leave a vivid reminder in everyone's mind what you were doing at that time, and you can go on through the history and do that.
Let's bring in Shawn Ray as we get a look at Dave in his element, putting on a posing routine. Shawn, in your mind, what makes a great poser, great entertainer on stage?
Yeah, I mean, I said this the other day. It's like people they may not remember where you placed, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Because the proof is in the pudding. You don't have to be the best to be remembered. I think the people that take pride in their work, they dot the I and they cross the T. And I was a good student of bodybuilding to pay attention coming up behind the likes of Labrada and Bob Paris, and a historian to look and see what Ed Corney and some of the guys before me, Chris Dickerson, were doing. I was one of the fortunate few to be introduced to bodybuilding as an amateur by another professional bodybuilder after joining a gym for 5 months in the form of John Brown, who I think is probably more notorious for his posing style and charisma than his 2 Mr. Universe and 3 Mr. World titles. So it was very impressionable upon me with my introduction to bodybuilding that the performance was, just as important as the physique. And with that, I came out and won my first 2 Best Poser awards in my first 2 times at bat. So I knew that was going to be a part of my career, a part of my paying attention more so than just counting calories and how much weight I can lift. And, when you have people coming up behind you that are close in age saying, hey, I copied you on this and I copied you from that. I'm a thief. I stole everything they saw. I stole. There's some Shawn Ray isms in my style, but I mean, everything, when I hit a pose, I can say, here comes the Bob Paris, here comes the Bob Paris pose. Bam. Here come my Frank Zane. I had poses that I took from other guys before me, and it's flattering to see the guys come up behind me, trying to execute and emulate what I was doing, but we're all copycats in one form or another. And when I was done with my career, of course, I fell out of love with bodybuilding because the guys weren't putting forth an effort. So I created a Best Poser award, and Melvin Anthony won that award. Darren Charles won that award. And when I go back to YouTube to watch bodybuilding, I look for guys that know how to show off their physique and actually took the time and put in the work. I got to see Chris and Flex work on their posing routines. John Brown, he's the master of improv and also the master of entertainment. And you have to have those elements in your bodybuilding career if you want to be remembered.
Dave, let's go to you because I want to go back to Shawn about something that he just mentioned as far as the history. But in your definition, in your opinion, we've gotten to see some posing routines right now. What stands out to you as far as a great poser?
Like Chris said, remembering a song and the song comes on the radio and you say, I remember Flex posted that, or I remember Cormier posted this, or I remember Paul Dillette posted this, or I remember Shawn Ray. This is Shawn Ray's song.
Yeah.
If you remember that and it made that emotional impact on you, then they did their job. Chris remembers when I turned into the Incredible Hulk in one of my routines. I mean, that you want to do memorable stuff like that.
That was awesome.
Because that's entertainment, man. Everyone entertains differently. I might not be able to do ballerina type moves on stage, but I can do my own shtick. Chris does his thing. Melvin does his pop and lock thing. Kamali did the Terminator routine. Everyone had their own thing, and we can remember those even now, 20, 30 years later, because they were so impactful when we saw them the first time or the second time they did it.
Shawn, let's go back to you because you mentioned sort of the student of the sport angle, which I'm very fascinated by, especially when it comes to posing, because you mentioned it, the likes of Labrada, the likes of Zane, and taking a little bits of their routine, taking little bits of their act. Talk about how all of that comes together to influence yours and just in general, a good quality posing routine that really pays homage to the history of the bodybuilding sport.
Well, I picture myself as a fan sitting in the audience first, and what's the audience going to see when Shawn Ray hits the stage? So it takes me to the music selection, like Chris said. I got to find a song that I like, a song that I know, a song that it doesn't matter where I'm at, I could pick up the beat, or I can know the words coming to my head. If I'm out there, and a lot of bodybuilders have done this, Dave. You walk out there, you're emceeing a show, the bodybuilder walks to the center of the stage, and the wrong music comes on, and the bodybuilder's frozen like a deer in the headlights. Mm-hmm. But for me, because I'm so practiced and so well rehearsed, I could pose to anything. Somebody singing the alphabet. I don't even need music to go out there and make it look like I have an actual routine because I practice so much on it. But the guys that pay attention to the style of the music that they like, they're not afraid. And guys that are not prepared, they have to hear that beat or they're going to be totally lost to have two left feet. If it's the wrong music, it's the wrong song. All that preparation goes out the window in that one moment of time because it's the wrong song or the music's not playing on time. I could pose to anything or I could pose to nothing. I watched Cedric McMillan do it this past season, and it was interesting because he chose to pose to no music at one of the competitions.
That's right,
and I was the MC. I go, "Where's your music?" He goes, I'm just going to have them applause. So he walked out there. The fans were waiting for the music, and he just started posting, and it just was like, and it turned into this big. It was, by the time it was over, they were chanting, and he was in his element, in his mind. He could hear the music, he could feel the beat, and he looked like an artist. He didn't need the music, and I appreciated what Cedric did because I had never seen it done before, and I know a few bodybuilders that probably could do it, but he had the guts to go out and actually do it, and he was well respected. Got a standing ovation.
Chris, I want to go to you because
one time
when we talk about the history of great posers, your name comes up, 1A. Take us through two things. Take us through the mind of Chris Cormier when you were preparing your own posing routines, and now that you're coaching so many of today's athletes. What philosophy do you instill upon them to bring out that kind of posing routine that people are going to remember?
First and foremost, it's got to be the right type of song. The right type of song is going to, and it needs to be in the right area. If I'm in another country, I'm probably going to pick something that they're familiar with and that I can groove to, or whether I'm in Europe or Australia, I try to keep something that's going to be, banging in that country or city. One thing that I try to instill is when you hit the poses, no matter if you're getting super radical spinning or going down to the floor, back up to your feet, I think it's important that you hit the poses properly.
Yes.
Because that's when your compulsory poses come into play. But when you hit a pose, whether you're, and I teach, I call it my triangle system, to where you want a triangle, like your top of your shoulders is the base of the triangle going into your waist. That's my philosophy on every pose. It should be based off of that. So being in the right position when you hit a pose, and whether you're torquing your body or twisting or a twisted back or an ab shot, try to get in the actual best pose for your body and for the crowd and the judges to judge on. Like, actually hit the pose, because a lot of posers, they don't actually get into the pose fully before they're trying to get to another pose. One time, I don't remember what Olympia it was, but the song I had in my mind was "Confessions"
By Usher.
And we were in the stage, and the stage is going to turn around. By the time I turned around, it's the motherfucking remix, and I just started and I had to shift it like that. That was a very good test of my professionalism at that time. Yeah, I just went with it, and I started doing the dance to that song, and just got in right into my routine.
Chris, talk about you.
That was pretty good.
Being one of the bigger bodybuilders, how did you go about combining that size yet that fluidity and presentation that you brought in your posing routines?
I think I was just a hybrid guy, though. I was two meals away from being on I was a mesomorph physique, but I was always like trying to keep my weight up to a certain point. It wasn't like weight was a something that I wasn't a big eater, so I had this certain look that was sort of in the middle of a bigger guy and still on the smaller side, to where I can move and do different things, doing the Michael Jackson. I was having fun. I was mostly laughing at myself the whole time I'm posing, because it's just so funny to me, because I'm really like shy normally.
But what I can tell you,
throw myself out there in the fire.
Let me add something, Chris, because these guys didn't see it. They didn't see that in Gold's Gym there's a posing room, and we took turns going in that posing room, not to work on a posing routine, but to do the mandatories. And I talked about it the other
With the
day.
mandatory. Yeah.
You know, when these guys were taking turns coming in and coming out, we could see the sweat that was on the floor from the work of standing there,
Oh yeah, for
hitting the
sure.
mandatory poses over and over and over again. You're like in a hot box. And when you come out, you're
Yeah.
dripping wet. You got a towel. It's almost like, you know, trying to hit the heavy bag for an hour, and then you just drenched. These guys were Flex would go, Chris would go, I'd come in there, Paul Dillette would come in there, and it was like all we were doing was flexing and squeezing doing the mandatory. So when you got to pose and you got to perform, it was almost it was a lot easier because it wasn't holding the pose as long as we had practiced. I hold a pose for 15 seconds and I do that for 4 or 5 different sets, and I go on to the next one and the next one, next one. By the time I've done my whole body, I'm exhausted. It's harder than actually doing a heavy set of squats. So then you got to get up and you do your routine. Like Chris said, at that stage, on the Olympia stage, when the Music Man plays the music, that's what we're living for. That's what they're going to remember. They don't remember the prejudging and the call outs and all that crap. They remember the routine. So when I surf through YouTube and I go through, listen, Gary Stridham was a beast when you stood next to him in the gym and when you saw him warming up backstage. But there's not a posing routine I want to go and find of Gary Stridham performing. I'd rather go look at Mike Quinn, or I'd rather go look up, you know, Melvin Anthony, or look for Darren Charles. I mean, I need something that's going to stimulate my interest when it comes to routine. Vince Taylor was very good at mixing some things up. So there were other guys like Paul Dillette. He didn't put the work in on the mandatories, and it showed when he stood on stage to hit at the night show. It's just not a very good look.
Dave, let's bring you in on this, because in previous episodes of Iron Debate, and I'm talking about years ago specifically, when the new scoring format was introduced to the Arnold Classic, which the posing scoring, there came up the debate, you know, as far as bodybuilding show being a muscle contest as opposed to a quote unquote dance contest. In your opinion, where is that fine line in terms of the posing that you're displaying the muscle versus putting on a show for the fans?
It's both. It's both. And that's what people, you're a fool if you think it's not, that the entertainment value doesn't count for something. You're a fool if you believe that, because that could be the difference between first and second place. It's like, imagine a dancer going on a TV show and not rehearsing the dance. I mean, who cares what the dancer looks like? We want the person to look good and everything like that, but it's the performance that we're watching. So the fans are going to watch the performance. Yeah, they want to see muscle and they want to see, you know, striations, and they want to see, you know, conditioning. But if you can't present, and I think the perfect example is Paul Dillette. I mean, this guy had a physique that should have won the Mr. Olympia competition. I mean, he had no flaws in his physique. His conditioning was really good. He just couldn't pose. And I don't know what the reason was. He had asthma, or he didn't practice, or whatever the case may be.
Lack of practice.
Yeah, probably.
Lack of practice.
Imagine if this guy posed like Shawn or Chris. I mean, who would have beat him? I mean, come on.
I got to tell you, Chris and myself, we practiced. I don't care what you say.
No.
We practiced those mandatories. The transitions were things that,
For sure.
transitions and stuff was just an extension of our personality, getting from one pose to the next. But practicing to hit when you see Chris's double bicep, you know that's the way you're supposed to hit it. You see the front lat spread, that's how you hit it. And when you see some guys like Paul Dillette, even Bertil Fox, even Gary Stridham, there's a couple of poses that they hit properly, but all their mandatories were not sufficient enough to my liking, especially like Gary Stridham hitting a rear double bicep or a rear lat spread. Bertil Fox, there's a lot of shots. I mean, he's got his most muscular in his side chest, but his back double bicep is forgettable. And Bertil Fox was a beast, you know? I mean, even Nasser El Sabati, for as big as he was, he didn't display his physique to its advantage, because I just think some of the guys that are bigger, that posing that we're talking about, practicing day in and day out as you lead up to the Olympia, that's the last thing they want to do. And so it's easy to skip.
I would practice at night. You know, you always look worse at the end of the day because you'd hold water, you know, during the course of the day. So when I would practice at night when I looked my worst. My stomach would be bloated, you know, because in the morning you're dry and stuff like that. And I would want to look my absolute worst when I posed, so that it would be the hardest for me to do. So I would have to exert more effort. I would pose longer because I was pissed off that I didn't look as sharp as I should have. And that helped me, because then when I actually did pose dry on stage, it was like, oh my God, I really do look good, you know? So I would do it opposite. Oh, really?
I would wake up, take my morning piss. I got nothing in my stomach and I'm ready to go. That's when I have full control over all of my muscles. It's a great way to warm up and also stretch prior to going to the gym. So that little bit of posing in the morning before my breakfast and before all the water comes into my system, got me warmed up so that when I hit the gym, my muscles have already been, kind of flexed a little bit before I got there. That helped.
Chris, let's bring you back in on this
But
because
you
I want
also
to get
see
your
some bodybuilders.
yeah. No, I wanted to get your reason as far
I
as
was going to say
again,
you also
that
see
school
somebody.
thought. Yeah, I wanted to get you that same question that I asked Dave, Chris. As far as bodybuilding competitions being a muscle contest versus those that are going to say, hey, it's not a dance competition at the end of the day. It is to display muscle. To that, you say what?
I say people who are judging this, and people love entertainment. They like to be entertained, and that you're going to put a different spark in someone's decision about you if you really brought it with the entertainment value. I was just going to say before that some bodybuilders, you could tell the ones that are very comfortable with that specific body part or pose, and they put way more into that, and then ones that they're less comfortable with or have with, and they're probably not going to hit it right, or they're going to but you can see a difference in the confidence level too.
When you're looking at Melvin Anthony posing right there, he's also a student of John Brown, a disciple of myself, along with Vince Taylor, along with Milo Sarchev. You can see the guys that actually he's taking the time. He's doing full extension. He's actually hitting the pose to give the photographer time to actually take the picture. He's not rushing. I noticed Sergio Oliva won the Best Poser Award at the Arnold Classic, but man, he was moving so fast that the majority of his poses weren't actually hit to you could actually photograph them. Melvin, coming from John Brown's school of posing, knew you have to let the photographers get the money shot. So hit the pose, and then Melvin would shift gears and go into, okay, now I'm going to entertain the fans, but you have to hit the actual pose so that the fans have a chance to see what you actually look like. You go up there and you race through a routine, it's just not going to come off the same way. Mike Matarazzo, even though he ran around the stage and Mike Quinn ran around the stage, you can see they would stop and hit the pose at some point. So you can't just be a spastic on the stage. Melvin was very good at taking his time, hitting the pose. And then you saw Chris doing the same thing. You saw Flex Wheeler doing the same thing. You saw myself doing the same thing. So there has to be something said for all these people that are being mentioned as good posers. We're all pretty much coming from the same cloth. We're paying attention to what the other guy's doing. Vince Taylor and his style came from John Brown. John Brown's style came from Sergio Oliva. Not Sergio Oliva, Serge Nubret. These are guys, and by the way, I'm mentioning a lot of black guys. Milo Sarchev is in there too, and he was a very classical poser, Milos, if you go back and study him. But Labrada and Bob Paris were very influential on what I did as well. But you don't have to go out there and do all that hip-hop stuff that Melvin's about to break into, although Melvin was the master at it. I think out of all the guys, Melvin was the best, including John Brown, when it came to this this type of posing.
Well, Shawn, let me get your assessment. Obviously, we're talking about Melvin Anthony. We are talking about your era where there seemed to be a very strong emphasis on posing. Your assessment on posing in today's bodybuilding. You like it? Is it lacking? Where do you fall?
I'm not a fan. I said earlier, I went to the Olympia last year. As a matter of fact, I've gone every year since '88. I love to brag about that because it's been such a long run. And there's not as many people devoted to the sport like that. I'm a big fan of bodybuilding, so I don't want to miss the biggest show on earth as it relates to bodybuilding. So when I start thinking about the great routines, the year 2019 is not going to be amongst them. I have to go back a ways. I'm going to challenge Chris on this one. I don't remember any of the music that any of the guys posed to from beginning to end on the open. In classic physique, there's a couple of routines I can remember, but on the open end, is there anybody, Chris, that that posed to a certain song that you remember the way that we used to coming up? I remember Phantom of the Opera with Phil Hill. I remember Barry DeMay posing to U2. I remember Mike Quinn posing to Party Train by the Gap Band. I mean, there's songs I remember. Even Dorian Yates, I remember the music, and Lee Haney posing
Dorian used
to
to come at the slaughterhouse, man. Dorian, remember had the thing when they had the judge, was that Judge Ito voice? He said that He said he was guilty of murder. Murder.
From the
But I mean,
O.J. Simpson trial, yeah.
I'm backstage laughing so hard. That was so
I'm just saying,
funny.
I don't remember a song from the open posing round that takes me to a physique. And that's what I used to pride myself on when it came to thinking of good routines and the Olympias, that I can remember the song, I can remember the athlete. Last year was pretty forgettable.
Chris, what is your assessment on today's posing and today's bodybuilding?
I just think it's so much. The attention is put into so many other aspects of the game, because you got to be good with training, you got to be good with nutrition. I think everyone's caught up on. I think 80% probably is going to nutrition and nutritional coaches, people that can actually train to a certain, level of intensity and stuff. That's going to be a smaller percentage, and a very small percentage, 5%, is probably going toward the posing routine and practice. And I think there's I think you could tell when the guys are totally trying to get through some posing routine, they got to take a break or something like that. I see guys not able to hold it together when they should, and they're should be a professional. And it's just not happening. Like, they don't think they don't value it as much as they should, because maybe don't think that, they don't have the look, that they don't have to worry about the posing. It's not as important, not judged.
Dave, when I was coming up, you would be surprised at how many promoters I didn't know were promoters or gym owners that were having shows said, I want you as my guest poser. I love your posing. I got so much work because I put in the work when it was time for other people to see it, that they wanted me to take it on the road. I was on tour like a rock star because of my posing routine, not because of my physique, but because they liked the way I was posing. Right. I'll take those checks.
Because a couple of weeks before the Arnold Classic, we had Sergio Oliva Jr., and you talked to him about specifically the Ed Corney posing award. He laughed and said that was going to be the easiest $10,000 he made. And obviously, he delivered on that promise. Arguably the most entertaining routine at the Arnold Classic. Obviously, there's him. But if you go by what Shawn and Chris are saying, there doesn't seem to be that much of an emphasis in today's bodybuilding. Where do you fall on that?
There isn't. And I don't know why these guys look, and maybe it's because there's so many classes at these shows now that they don't really hire guest posers anymore. But, I put a lot of time and entertainment value into my posing routines because I got a lot of guest posings from it. Mm-hmm. I had in 01, 2, 3, I had 25 guest postings a year. And that's almost half the weekends in the year. I made a lot of money from guest posing.
Yeah, it adds up.
I don't even know how they all worked out, but they weren't in every weekend was free. I somehow managed to slip them all in. But I would do a seminar, and I would do a guest posing at the show at night, and I would collect $2,000 plus all my expenses for the weekend. I mean, I'm sure Shawn and probably Chris made more than that because they were pros, but that's a lot of cash in your pocket. A lot of these guys just give you an envelope of cash at the end of the day,
But Dave, check this out. In this sport today, look, Shawn is in his home. I'm here. You're in your home. I mean, there's no reason why someone can't approach a top professional or a coach or someone that they respect,
get help
from them. I would
you can do it online.
I'm asking. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I offer it online, and people act like they can't spend $400 when they spending that easily on
a trainer
or or anything, train or anything. But that little bit of money you can get on Skype and work with me, like you crazy.
There's no better feeling than when you get off stage and you slaughtered that audience, that they just fucking loved you and they couldn't get enough of you. I mean, the feeling, the elation that you get, it doesn't even matter how you place after that. It's like the Gladiator movie. You win the audience, you win the day, and that's the day.
And I think our generation was in competition with each other. I knew Chris was bringing something. Yeah. I knew Flex was putting in the work. I knew Kevin Levrone was over there putting together his music, which typically included a music change. I knew that Vince Taylor was working on something that was going to try to have the last word. So we were up against a lineup of guys that took pride in their work. We all took pride in the posing round, and we kind of knew it wasn't going to really count for anything in terms of the overall total score, because Mr. Olympia was going to win that round no matter what. So that meant it was going to be Ronnie, who was not in the conversation as ever being a great performer. He's not going to outpose Chris. He's not going to outpose Flex. He's not going to outpose me, Vince, or any of the big guys out there. But yet he always won that posing round, the same way that Dorian Yates had won. So even though we knew that the round wasn't being scored properly, and it probably wasn't going to take us to the promised land and beat Mr. Olympia, we took pride in what we were bringing to the stage enough to know that I'm going to try to outpose Chris, or I'm going to try to outpose Flex, or I'm going to try to outdo Vince. We had our own little competition, and that we were able to capitalize and take it on the world and go around the world. And people appreciated seeing our Olympia routines in person. I tell you, I'm a contest promoter. I don't want to fly any of these guys to come and perform their Olympia routines at my show based on the effort that they're putting forth right now. And there's a lot of promoters that feel the same way. So I throw out the challenge to all of these pros that are competing. If you're going to show up at the Olympia of all places, where it may potentially be pay-per-viewed around the world, may be archived for the history on YouTube, and your children and their children will one day get to see you perform at the Olympia. If you don't take pride in your posing routine and what these fans are paying to see you, then it's just embarrassing to the sport. It doesn't matter how much you dieted or how much you trained or how big your arms are. You need to leave your mark on your routine on that Olympia stage so we can come back and look you up, and you'll live forever on YouTube, and people can come up and copy what you're doing. You'd be amazed at how many people tell me, hey, man, I saw you and Chris. I saw Melvin. I love hearing those compliments because it tells us the work we put in, it meant something. It meant something to us. And right now, It doesn't mean anything to the athletes. So I'm challenging all the Olympians to do their homework and raise the bar. I mean, they got to go back to the performance, man. They do. It shouldn't take a monetary incentive because we didn't get paid to do a great routine at the Olympia the way that Arnold's giving away $10,000 at his show. I mean, that is an incentive for the athletes to try to do something. I did it for 4 years. I gave away 10 grand for 4 years, and it still was falling on deaf ears. I had one or two guys like Sergio, I'm going to get that. That's the easiest 10 grand I'm going to make. The other athletes didn't give a shit. So, and his routine wasn't great. He just wasn't challenged by anybody. So I would love to see these guys, don't get mad at the messenger. I had the hardest critic in John Brown that would rip me to shreds if I turned the wrong way, or I knelt the wrong way, I threw up the wrong arm. And I had to go back and correct all that stuff. That criticism should challenge you to be better than what you are. 2019's posing routines, they all sucked across the board at the Olympia. Surprise us, guys. Don't do it for me. Challenge yourself. Give your fans something memorable. And maybe these promoters will start bringing you back as guest posers at shows, and you can make some extra money.
Chris, let's go to you. I want to get a thought from both of you because we're watching Kai right now. We saw Flex Wheeler a little while ago. In your opinion, when you think back to the most memorable posing routines you ever saw, if you had to name one, which one stands out? Chris, let's go to you first.
I'm going to have to go with Vince Taylor in 1991 when he first came out with the robot for the first time with the Terminator. Like that shit. Like I hate to go after Vince Taylor when we used to compete against each other. Like I know damn well you're going to bring the house down, and I'm going to have to really bring something super special just to get noticed. But yeah, I have to go with the Terminator. Shawn had some good ones too. I think at the what was that? One of the Mariah Carey with Shawn was good.
99, yeah.
99. They had the. I mean, yeah, but I'd have to go right there. Those two. Vince Taylor was the showman, though, man. That guy is on another level. See, Vince would make you think that he looks way better than what he actually looked when he don't actually look that way. I'm like, I saw you backstage. You did not look good.
Cold water.
But he get out there, he's fucking dancing like Michael Jackson. He don't give a shit. He was like, but it comes across to the judges like, yeah, he is better than what he's actually looks like. You know, he just looks better.
Shawn, one posing routine that stands out to you in the modern history of bodybuilding, what would it be?
Well, it was the one I was standing on the side of the stage watching in the form of Lee Labrada in my first Olympia as a fan in 1988, where I was 13th or 14th. And I got to see Labrada do his thing inches away from where I wanted to be one day in life. And to see Labrada at 5'5" take command of the stage like he was a matador I just thought, he's the guy that I gotta. He's my yardstick, because Lee Haney was up here, right? I mean, he's already won the Olympia 4 times by then, and Labrada coming off of his posing routine in 1988, I was like, holy spit and polish. That's exactly what I want to do when it's my turn to get out there. And so I held Lee in very high regard when it came down to professionalism, to dress, to color, to executing the pose, to the smile when you're supposed to smile, because you can't smile on every pose, and to think bigger than he was. He posed. I remember Arnold was telling Franco, you can't pose like this, Franco. You've got to open up really big. Labrada he had some sweeping moves, some awesome poses, and he had very small capacity. He was very, he didn't have the width, he didn't have the girth, he didn't have the length, but you couldn't tell it when he was up on stage. He may have been 6 foot, 400 pounds, but he was an artist, and his work was impeccable. 88 was the most impressionable for me, and that routine took me to another level mentally as far as going forward as an Olympian. Performance is everything.
I think we lost Sid there for a second. We lost our moderator.
Our moderator.
I think
I want you, fool. I want to pose down with you, fool.
For me, Kai Green's routine was so memorable. And, I'm not even talking about the Kai Green we saw, the last couple of years. I'm talking about the Kai Green when he first started, when he wasn't even that big, when he was like Team Universe guy, all natural.
Yeah, he was good.
He would float through the air. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was like he had no weight to his body. It was like he would levitate almost.
2006, he won the show in Colorado that I promoted, or he was last. He was last in the show I promoted. Phil Heath won it, and he won the Best Poser Award, $10,000. Thank God.
He was incredible.
That. He was phenomenal, and he came back the next year and went from last to first with an even better routine, and that just took him to another stride. He's one of the guys financially that were able to capitalize off the money based on his effort that he put into his routines. Some people, Absolutely. it might have been a little bit out there, but most artists are always kind of on the edge. You're like, is he really hitting that pose? But I mean, just the effort. You have to reward the effort.
You could tell he worked for days and days and days. He would take a storyboard, his routine, like every move and articulation. He would draw like pictures of it. I mean, talk about visualization. I mean, think about it. You could see the way he would flex his glute. I know, Chris, you're a technician glute like guy. This too. Glutes and hams and obliques. He had control of every muscle group on stage. That was so kind of similar to what you did, Chris. Yeah. You didn't even know how he moved these muscles. Like most people can't flex their hamstrings and their upper body at the same time. He was flexing little nuanced muscles in his legs and upper body that I don't even know how he could even communicate with them. But that's because he practiced.
And again, we're going to be remembering Kai more as a performer than we are the Arnold Classic Championships that he won and the first Olympia runner-ups. All that stuff doesn't matter. We remember Kai the performer. Which is a compliment to him.
Yeah.
Guys, take Kai out of the equation. Yeah. Look at the modern landscape of bodybuilding right now.
You
hear me, right?
Yep.
This is great technology, though.
Shawn?
No.
Shawn can't hear you. So
you can hear me?
Nope.
I don't know. I hear. We all hear you, but you might want to come in and out again. And
okay. It doesn't matter. I don't want to. Not
you, but Sid will come back in. The key. My question is, and I'm sure Sid's going to ask the same question: is when you compare the entertainment value of a, say, Fred Biggie Smalls or Kai Green versus the beauty and the artistry of posing that you would see from, say, Melvin, Shawn, Cormier. Is there a right way to pose on stage, or is it whatever happens to work for your physique?
You still got to pose. I think Fred danced a little bit too much. He was a hip hop bebop type guy, but Melvin made sure he put his first couple of minutes, 2 minutes in there before he broke it down and turned it into a hip hop type thing. So as a pure poser, Melvin's head and shoulders. Darren Charles is the same way. He did a lot of dancing, kind of like Fred Biggie Smalls, but we don't have those guys today doing either of those. We don't have pure performers, and we don't have any hip hop entertainer guys. I don't think we
Who's
have
the
any
best?
other
Who's the best amalgamation of both?
I think Melvin Anthony's the best out of all of them when it comes to the combination of entertaining and posing.
Yeah, Melvin would do. He would take little things from people. I'm sure because he got some things from Shawn. He got some things from John. He got some things from me. I know for a fact. I could point out different things that I did first. He even went out as far as the guy. What's the guy on Venice Beach?
Groovin' Ruben.
Yeah.
No, you got to go on YouTube, type in Groovin' Ruben,
Ruben,
and you'll see him. He brought all that stuff to the bodybuilding stuff.
And he did that, and then Melvin kind of took part of that and just put it all into one.
That's why you got to give him credit because he was able to take all of that and steal it all and then mesh it and make it his own. So that's why I'm going to give Melvin the nod right now. If I got to pay my money to go watch somebody put it down, I know he's gonna take me back musically, and I know he's gonna take me where I need to go artistically.
Right. Well, let me get
back in the day. It was really important. I was going to say earlier, but I got cut off. But it was important for us enough to where, Paul Dillette didn't want to practice with us. He said he's going to do it at home.
Right.
And he was like, no. Yeah, I was like, okay, we're gonna still be here practicing. So me and Rico make a trip to his house to see Shawn. Paul, show us where you're practicing.
Yeah.
Show it.
He didn't have a mirror, probably.
No, he had a mirror, but he had those skinny ones.
Yeah, he's laid on the floor.
Skinny long ones that's up against the wall right there.
You can't see anything.
In the dining room. I was like, we were like, Paul, you're practicing. Paul's like this wide.
Hey, you get what you put out. You get what you put out. And
from a perspective of posers, I think Kai Green might have been one of the greatest entertainers, but his mandatory execution wasn't quite conventional. Would you say that hurt him?
I don't think so.
Well, I don't think it hurt him because of who he was against. Well, mind you take Phil Heath out of the equation.
You lost to Phil,
I know you take Phil out of the equation, and Kai Green's Mr. Olympia a couple of times.
Could he have beat Phil Heath had he been a better executioner of the mandatory poses?
I personally think Phil's more of a complete bodybuilder, which is why he actually ultimately beat him.
But he would, if you're in an unconventional front double bicep, sometimes it works for you, sometimes it works against you. I'm sure at some point in time, some judge is like, oh, yeah, that's a cool way to do it or whatever. But if you're standing next to someone else and they're really taking up, utilizing their physique to the fullest, that might put you, might hurt you. I know I used to hurt Aaron Baker because Aaron Baker had these wild ways of doing stuff, and I don't think the judges really liked it. That's just what I heard.
Yeah, that's because Chris, we did have the same judges every year. I mean, look, the judges, when I got ready to come up, they're like, oh, here comes Shawn Ray again, because they've seen it so many times, right? You get used to it.
Yeah.
But I never feel that way. I never feel that way when a country singer's coming up to sing his country music. I know exactly what I'm going to get, right?
Right. Yeah,
but
we had the same judges from when we were teenagers on up. Still the same people.
And that was a problem after a while because our judges at the Olympia were the same guys. They saw us come up. They saw us for over a decade, and they want to see something new. So you put that style up against somebody coming in with something different, and suddenly the judges can get excited, even if it's somebody stomping around the stage like Marcus Rule. I mean,
they're people. They're just people. The judges, they're not machines.
Yeah,
but even Marcus Rule didn't have a posing routine, but man, he'd get a standing ovation when I watched him come out.
He was a freak, though.
Yeah, he had a freak factor.
Well, yeah, guys, let's just talk about again. It seems as if again your generation had that passion, that creativity that you feel is lacking right now. How do you incentivize that in terms of modern bodybuilding? Right, we saw the Arnold Classic added in as scoring criteria. Do you see that as something that needs to be done? Should there be incentivization in terms of upping that creativity for the posing routines? Or does that hinge back on that debate between muscle contest versus dance contest? Shawn?
I personally believe it should be a federational thing. It should come from the higher ups. It should come from the judges. There's a disconnect from the athletes and the day of the show and the federation. So here's how it works. We have the Olympia coming up in December. There's going to be a date where I get the contract and I've got to sign it and send it back, right? The next communication I'm going to get is someone's going to contact me about my plane ticket and my hotel and whatever contest tickets I got. The next communication will be when I'm on the ground and I'm registering to get my ticket and my badge and whatever else, my number. And then we'll have a small meeting prior to me stepping on stage. The NFL, the NBA, they're going to have these meetings about how they're going to roll things out long before the game is actually played. There are no meetings where we're talking to the athletes, telling them what we expect, what they need to do, whether it's on an individual basis or on a collective basis. Way in advance, the federation should be saying, look, guys, here's what we're going to be looking for this year. I should get a letter that says something about the posing round, coming from the promoter, coming from the federation, coming from somebody telling me specifically about this round and what I need to do if I'm going to make the sport survive, if I'm going to be able to make extra money as a result of putting in my effort for the thing. But somebody's got to tell me that I got to do a routine, or otherwise I'm just going to show up like everybody else and just have the music man put on some background noise, because that's what it is. It's gotten to the point where the pros have a limited time to pose, and I'm just going to press play and you go out there and do what you got to do. No one cares. Even the guys that aren't in the top 10 get to go out there for 15 seconds, hit 2 or 3 poses, and they're gone. But no one's telling the athletes that we've got to elevate this round, because this is the round that people are paying the money to see. They're coming to see you. I guarantee you that no one's in these athletes' ears giving them the importance of the posing round, whether it's scored or not, whether there's money or not. You've got to do something to entertain these fans, or we're going to lose our fans, and then you guys aren't going to have any jobs guest posing around the world. I mean, amateurs are getting more. You remember Tom Terwilliger?
Sure.
You remember Russ Testo?
Yeah. He's still posing Russ Testo at 60 years old.
Is he really?
Yeah.
And
I saw him at the Emerald Cup. Yeah.
Mike Quinn made a small fortune off of guest posing. Mike Matarazzo was one of the more flamboyant, financially lucrative guest posers that you could actually hire.
Tony Pearson was dynamite too.
Yeah.
Those days those days are gone, because I think there's just no one saying, look, if you guys want to make extra money, give me a reason to tell this promoter to bring you to Germany. Sure. Give me a reason to.
Okay.
Chris, let's go to you with that same question. In your opinion, the solution to bringing back an incentive for today's bodybuilders to put on those kind of creativity, bring out that kind of creativity that we saw in your era?
I agree with Shawn too. It's got to come from someone like, hey, if you want to score some extra points in the judge's mind, you got to bring some fire in that routine. You got to do something, hitting the poses right, but also just entertainment factor alone. You have to do something better than what's been going on, because that's, people, you don't want people going to the concession stands. You want them like rushing to make the time for the show, because they don't want to miss something that's going to be, fantastic.
Dave, final word.
I think that the panel has spoken. The posing round, whether it's scored specifically in terms of like points, which I don't think that'll ever happen, it's scored in the judges' minds. It's scored in the fans' minds. If you want to be a popular bodybuilder, if you want to win the crowd and win the judges, put some time into your routine. Practice it. It's part of the sport. Displaying what you have is just as important as what you got. I know guys who didn't even look that good, but they can show it on stage, and because they can show it on stage, they look great, and they elevated themselves above that. So I've also seen people who look great who looked worse because they couldn't display it. Hire guys like Chris Cormier. Hire guys like Kenny Wallach. Hire the choreographers out there who can help you to display. Sheila Brown is another good person in Texas. Work on those routines. It forces you when you hire someone, just like a coach. I have to. I get people who send me updates. Those updates are accountability to me. So now they're going to die hard because they want to impress me. Okay. Same thing with if you have a posing session with Chris Cormier, you're going to want to impress Chris. You're going to work hard on that session, and you know what? It might suck while you're doing it, but when the session's over, you're going to be a better poser. And it's going to motivate you to want to go practice on your own, because now you learned all these little tips from Chris on how to hold your body in the right thing, what looks good for your physique, how to turn, all these things. Believe me, if bodybuilding is your life and you love it, which most bodybuilders do, then leaving out posing is analogous, to not eating enough protein. It's just as dumb. So,
Dave, for all the compliments, I had a posing coach with John Brown.
Right.
Chris Cormier's had different people help him.
Robbie
Robinson. Chris Dickerson.
Robbie used to stomp his damn feet if I didn't do something right.
Chris Dickerson worked with Bill Pearl. Arnold Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron right in front of us is working with a choreographer.
Right.
I mean, who's above that? Who is above learning how to pose properly? I don't know. I mean, but right now it
Dude,
looks like a lot. These guys aren't.
I would call the top people in the world. I know because I used to go drive up to Joe Weider's office. You know, if I can get a conversation with him alone, that would be great. Or if I can get some learning from someone who was saying he was Shawn Ray's cousin. I was like, really? I drove like 2 hours. I got off work.
Right.
Shawn Ray's cousin, you must know something.
Yeah, it's just the excitement level is different today.
Jordan had a shooting coach. Why can't Mr. Olympia have a posing coach? You know,
right? Yeah.
Not to mention we're all complaining about it. So I mean, somebody's got to break out of the pack and pay attention. And eventually, like all generations, someone will come out of the pack and we'll be like, "Holy crap!" You know, someone's going to come out and we're going to be blown away by the routine or by the effort, even if they don't have the physique to back it up.
Right.
Shawn, before we go, I just wanted you to finish up your thought before you got cut off. We were just talking about solutions as far as bringing back some incentive for today's bodybuilders to put in that kind of work and creativity that you guys do.
How do we incentivize, Shawn, bodybuilders to put the work into posing?
If you want to make extra money, because I get a lot of questions about making money as a bodybuilder. You want to make money? Make a routine. Leave an impression. Take the time out to dot the I across the T in terms of your physique. Your physique is all you have. We don't really care about how much you lift or how big your arms are. Practice your routine. Get with a posing coach. Think outside the box. Do something you never did before. But also you can do it and have fun by at least having the right music. You have the right routine and you can document it. Then you can put that out there in the universe and send the link to contest promoters that are constantly advertising on Instagram. The dates of their show, the location of their show, and they have their contact information. If I have a great little sizzle reel of me performing, I want to send that out and say, I'm available. Sign me up.
Sure.
Chris?
But one thing I would see wrong is I think people think that they can look at YouTube and look at one of my routines, one of Shawn's routines, anybody's routines, and then
You don't work that way.
they're going to learn how to hit the pose.
Right.
That pose may not even work for their physique, but they actually try it on stage and it looks stupid. And then they're not even confident with it. And then but then they're trying to sell this story like, yeah, I worked on my routine, I worked hard.
I copied your routine. You're like,
how many people do you know? Now you guys hit the pose, but how many people hit that? I call it the Dorian pose, where he puts his leg out because he had that crazy sartorius muscle. I know Chris hits that too because he got the crazy sartorius. I mean, not many people hit that pose because they don't have the leg separation. But I see a lot of people doing it, and they shouldn't be doing the pose. You know?
Shouldn't be doing it.
And that's what Chris alluded to. You need to consult a professional. Hello, that's what we're here for. Nobody said we're not willing to help. I mean, we take.
There's so much more goes on with a pose.
We give it back.
The amount of weight you distribute on one's feet or toes or heels or outside of your foot or inside of your leg or, holding, keeping connection with your stomach during these poses, all this stuff comes into play, and you can't get that by you think you're going to just watch someone. You don't know exactly what they're doing.
Well said.
One of the ways I tried to get back at my show last year in Hawaii was the day before the show, right after registration. I held a posing clinic. So anyone that was interested in learning how to hit the poses properly and have questions about their confidence, that was a great time because most of those guys, after they check in, they disappear and they go try to figure out, should I eat carbs? Should I put on my Protan or whatever? Instead, they came in, we lined them all up, and we individually helped them perfect little nuances. And we had some judges there to help them stand on the stage. This is without a crowd, and that's the best time to do it.
Sure.
And it was very well received. So we're willing to help. I mean, you just have to ask for it because we're not just going to volunteer our services.
One thing I did when I was out there in Kuwait, I'd have Nathan Diasher come and Rolly Winker come at the same time and have them posing at the same time.
Yeah, it's good.
Like two pit bulls.
Yeah. That's great.
That was some of the best times that they put forth great effort. Cause they're not gonna don't want to look pussy next to this guy. So they're really going. That was some of the best routines.
Some of my best time was sitting outside that posing room in Gold's Gym, waiting for Flex to finish his posing, waiting for Chris to finish his posing.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't watching. Yeah. I was wondering because I wasn't in there. I was sitting out there. I was wondering how hard are they doing? How hard are they doing it? And I would walk in, and the door would open, the steam would come out. It's not a hot box. It's not a steam room.
The sweating,
Now it's my time, so it would just take me to another place.
Hard, man.
Yeah,
definitely worked hard.
Well, this was fun. Yeah. Another hour with legends on Iron Debate. We're going to do it again next week. And surely as we approach December, Shawn, I'm sure you're going to keep us updated with what's going on the digital side for the Olympia broadcast, pay-per-view, and everything to go along with that. And Chris, keep us posted with what you have going on. Obviously, you are working with some of the...
I got the Chris Cormier Classic coming August 22nd in Milwaukee. So
cool.
Save that date.
Very
Excellent.
cool.
Save that
Excellent.
date.
Well, gentlemen, pleasure having you on board this episode. Special thanks, Dave Palumbo, Tyler Shore, Chris Cormier, and Shawn Ray. I'm Sadiq Faruqi. Till next time, be safe.